Hey friends, today's video is about what happened at this year's Renaissance Fair, the 2017 Renaissance Fair. Most of my videos have been very bubbly and happy about these great days that have been filled with surprisingly good luck or beautiful memories, but this one is about a day that didn't quite go as I expected it to go. So before I talk about the day itself, I just want to talk a little bit about how excited I was beforehand. So I actually decided to create a costume for this year's Renaissance Fair. I used to go to Renaissance fairs with my dad as a kid, but I haven't been to one as a grown-up. So I decided to create a costume because I'm old enough now and I have a little bit of extra cash now that I'm not a student, and I thought this would be great. I have a dress that I can work into it, and some things hanging around, like some ceramic work that I did in college that would be really cool to hang off of a belt. So I decided to take a black velvet dress that is pretty much ankle length and long sleeve. And that was my mistake, as I'll discuss later, but on top of that, I made this belt and took kind of all these different things that I had hanging around the house, some ceramics that I did in college that were these little black vase type things, and they look kind of like potion bottles, and I took a little copper thing that looks like a cauldron, and I crocheted some little satchels so I didn't have to carry a purse, and basically I made this really cool kind of witch looking outfit, because I'm definitely excited for October, even though this happened in September. But one of the things that happened with my costume is I bought this belt from Goodwill, and thrift store belts are only like 25 cents each, but I got this brown, I think faux leather belt with this wooden buckle sort of thing that you just fed the belt through, and then I just tucked the end of it back into the belt itself, and I cinched my dress at the waist with that because I thought that it would fit a little bit better because the dress is a little bit loose on me. The reason I got the belt in the first place was that it looked a little bit ragged and like it had been worn out, and I was like, perfect, this, I don't have to go and distress this, it's already well loved looking. But then as I put it on to test out the outfit before the Renaissance Fair, it kept crumbling. The outer layer kept crumbling off, and there were these little bits of brown faux leather all over the floor, and it was just really messy. And by the time that we actually got to the Renaissance Fair, the buckle itself had kind of split, and so it was just hanging off of me, and it looked so bad. So it was just really not a good time with that. But what actually happened is when we got to the Renaissance Fair, it was hosted on the grounds of this, I think, a Universal Unitarian church, actually. It wasn't a Christian church, but it was some sort of house of worship. And as part of their church properties, they had a little thrift store, I guess for fundraising for the church. And so I went in there and I snagged a new belt for $1, and that was all fine and dandy. One of the things that ended up happening when we got there is we unexpectedly had to pay for entry, and that was no problem, but I just didn't expect that. So that kind of set the tone for the day, is that, you know, my belt was falling apart and we had to pay a little bit more than we expected to. The worst part of the day, I think, was the fact that it was exceptionally hot. It was probably, I'd say maybe like, I think around 80 degrees, which doesn't sound bad, but then you gotta remember that I'm in the southeast and it's super humid, so the air is very thick. And I was wearing a full-length black velvet dress, and I forgot to mention earlier, but I also had a fur collar, like I had pinned on my shoulder this fur collar thing for added effect, which looked super cool, but it was so hot. It's so hard to explain, because a lot of times if you're just hot in the summer, it's like, oh, I just need a drink of water, I need to go sit in the shade for a minute. I could not find a place to be comfortable, and I could barely walk around without like panicking and telling my friend like, okay, we have to go inside again. And they did have an indoor air-conditioned area, which was very thankful, because I probably would have actually had some health issues if I hadn't been able to go inside and sit in the air conditioning every now and then. Eventually it got so bad that for like most of the day, I don't have very many memories at all of looking around or what I saw or the interactions I had. Most of my memory was, it's so hot, alarm bells are going off in my head. And it wasn't even like a sweating thing, it was like I wasn't really sweating, and I think that was actually part of the problem. And eventually what ended up happening is I resolved to go to a vendor that was selling clothes at the little festival, and I was like, give me something that is not what I'm wearing. I feel like I'm gonna pass out. And so the lady there, bless her heart, she was more concerned with trying to put me in something that looked good, and I was just more concerned with trying to wear something that was not horribly hot, and also covered up my legs, because I conveniently didn't shave my legs that day, because, oh yeah, I had worn tights there too. So they had this little camping tent kind of thing behind their booth where you could try on clothes, and as soon as I got in there and I peeled off that black velvet dress, it was like angels were singing, and it was like in a video game when your heat meter is on fire because you're just so overheated. The internal panic that my body gave me is just hard to convey, because it's like, oh, you know, I was warm, whatever. But really, the fact that it was so freaking hot, just, it made me panic in a way that I don't do as viciously with other health conditions of mine. Like, I mean, even after I changed out of my outfit into this new one, I was still really hot, and it was only 80 degrees. And finally, I had the realization that I'm on medication that makes me heat sensitive. I had remembered a conversation that I had with my doctor the year before. It's been about a year now. And before our first meeting, when I got prescribed the medication, he was like, oh yeah, by the way, people who take this medication are extra sensitive to heat, so you should be fine, but just keep that in mind in the future if you're going to do any outdoor activities. Oops! Yeah, so I almost killed myself because I ended up taking medication that makes me heat sensitive, and I wore something exceptionally heat retentive. So even in my new outfit, I ended up being a little bit overheated, but eventually over time, with the new breezy skirt, I ended up feeling a lot better. And thankfully, my friend bought that for me as a kind of, I feel sorry for your poor health right now gift. And I didn't have to spend an inordinate amount of money on new clothes at the Renaissance Fair, because I don't quite have the job that she has. Either way, this drawing kind of represents that moment of going from very warm to very comfortable. It is maybe sort of seasonal too. It, of course, is not supposed to explicitly be myself, but I did use my own face as a reference, and it's just kind of sketchy because these are sketch diaries. These aren't full finished image diaries, even though I spent a lot more time on this drawing than I would consider a sketch. But I decided to put the two figures in this kind of dancing or embracing pose just to show that they're sort of happy or sort of dancing, and in a way it's also kind of inspired by the current changing of seasons, supposedly. I mean, today was also a very hot day, but we just had the autumn equinox, and it is inspired by that passage of seasons and how the nature just kind of continues on in this little dance with itself, and it's happy to do so. I'm pretty excited to be able to show digital art now. I really enjoy digital art, and I feel like I'm a little bit more adept at it than traditional art, but because I can't fight the process of getting better and I can't hide from getting better, I need to practice more traditional art and more watercolors and gouache, because that's what I want to get better at. And so I'm not going to do entirely digital because I think that that's the easy way out. At the very end, I played around a little bit with the background colors and tried to fix the face some. That whole face just kind of threw me off this whole time, and I really should have taken a reference photo, but I didn't have somebody to take a picture of my face from that angle while I was drawing, so I just said, screw it, let's get this thing done. So here's the final image. I hope that this girl looks a lot happier than I did when I had my experience at the Renaissance Fair. It was still very fun overall, though. I had a lot of fun looking at shops, and I played some games with my friend and won a few prizes and did all sorts of neat little things once I was able to actually make sure that I wasn't going to literally die. If you like this video, how about you consider giving it a thumbs up, or maybe a comment, or even subscribing? I'm trying to work hard to put out lots of content for people to enjoy, and it's a really fun process, and I hope that you guys will continue to stick with me as I continue on my art journey and learn how to not die at a Renaissance fair. Thanks for watching! I can't wait to see you in the next video.